Mate, congratulations on your film.
Thank you.
How did you come across this movie?
Yeah, it's a good question. And honestly, I've been trying to do a kind of variation on Christmas Carol for a while, and I think in the industry, people knew that I really loved the book, and I was looking for something, and a producer friend of mine rang me up, and where was I? I was in Mexico on a beach with the family, and they said, "Do you want to go back to Victorian England?" And so they emailed it to me, and I read the script, and it was a great script, and it was a good take. And then 2 years later, we were making it on a set somewhere in Europe.
It certainly is an interesting take on A Christmas Carol to basically retell the story from the point of view of Charles Dickens actually creating the thing and having the characters slowly populating his writing room. It's an adorable device.
Yeah, I mean, you have to hand it to the script writer, Susan Coyne, who basically found a really fresh way to get into the story of A Christmas Carol and basically reflect Charles Dickens' own life through the book he's about to write over this 6-week mad period where he wrote Christmas Carol in 1843. So, I mean, it's a really fascinating, it's kind of semi-biopic, but it's also a kind of retelling of Christmas Carol, and you learn a bit of both. And it's a funny, joyous film, much like the original Christmas Carol. And then it has a little bit of subtext to it as well. So, I mean, Susan Coyne really cracked it, the scriptwriter.
Did you know much about Charles Dickens' role in reintroducing Christmas as a celebrated holiday?
I knew a bit about it. I mean, I know a lot about it now after all my research, but at the time I've read a bit of Dickens and a few of his biographies and the like, and I knew a bit about it, but I'd never taken that much interest in it. But then the idea that he is the man who invented Christmas it's kind of a bold statement, because obviously he didn't invent Christmas, but he kind of reinvented Christmas, maybe. And in a little kind of way, he invented Christmas for me, because I was brought up in a family that didn't really celebrate Christmas. And so when I first read A Christmas Carol when I was like 12, it kind of gave me an idea of what Christmas should be and what everyone was celebrating, really, and what people were hoping for. So in a way, for me, for the little boy that I was, it kind of invented Christmas.
Yeah, I did want to know if you are a Christmassy type of person, or if you once were and then went off it a bit and then came back. What's your relationship with Christmas?
No, I was historically the Grinch that stole Christmas. There's no doubt about it. I was a real old harumph around Christmas. I didn't quite understand what all the fuss was about. And then, bizarrely, my Aussie in-laws and my wife, who's Australian, and now we come to Australia every Christmas, and we have a sunny barbecue Christmas. But now with my 2 kids, who are 8 and 6, I see it through their eyes, and it's the most amazing time of year when you see it through someone else's eyes, when you see it through the kids. And you can see why it's such a spectacular moment for everyone, for the entire family. And we have all our extended family on my lovely in-laws veranda in Maitland, near Newcastle, in New South Wales, and we all, gather the tribe and open up all the presents and stuff. But the kids just go nuts, and it's just lovely to see. So now I am the man who believes in Christmas. So I'm very pro Christmas now, whereas I used to be a right old harumph about it.
Because I heard about your film, and the initial, I guess, Grinch response is, do we need another Christmas film? And then, of course, you think about it for a couple of minutes and you go, actually, you can never have enough Christmas films. Especially now.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be, it's just a brilliant story, and I think it's a really fresh and original way of doing a Christmas movie. It's a Wonderful Life is one of my favorite movies of all time. And, that is really a Christmas Carol done backwards, if you think about it. It's a good man shown how bad the world would be if he didn't exist, which is the opposite of Scrooge. He's a bad man who's shown what a good place the world could be if he changed. So, Christmas Carol is a very influential film in my career. And then strange films, which aren't even Christmas films, but have the same thematic. I mean, Groundhog Day is a fabulous film. But if you think about it, that has a lot of the same qualities as A Christmas Carol. It's a man who has to reinvent himself. And, he doesn't travel in time, but he stays in the same moment in time until he becomes the new, better person. And so I think there's been a reinvention of this story many, many times, because if you think about it, it feels like a bit of a cliche now. A guy goes back in time and kind of visits himself. But at the time, it was kind of a revelation. No one had done a story like that before. And you can imagine what it was like when it first came out. So, and I can see why it resonates now, and people still use the same themes. Literally every Christmas movie has this theme at it, pretty much at the heart of it.
Well,
maybe bar Die Hard, but even Die Hard he changes,
I actually found it quite interesting that here was a film, apart from the Christmas theme, of course, it's also a film about writer's block. And I found it quite funny that you're dealing with Charles Dickens. Probably, if Shakespeare is the greatest dramatist of all time, Charles Dickens has got to be the greatest melodramatist of all time. And to actually see him struggling with the concept of a character changing or not changing, struggling with Scrooge and seeing, can he change? Was it intended as a film about writer's block?
No, yeah, absolutely. It's about an artist's struggle as well. And again, that's kind of based on some factual stuff. I mean, Dickens was known to get into these kind of real dark night of the soul moments where he couldn't get the story out of his head, and when they did, they would all come flying out of his head, and he would voice all the characters. And there are accounts from his daughter's diaries where she walked past his writing room, and you'd hear all the voices of the characters coming to life, and Dickens just not being able to put them in the right order and getting angry and angry. So look, if we'd done that in a film, i.e. he sits down and you see the close-up of his pen writing on a piece of paper and then he scrunches it up and throws it in, it would have been a bit boring. I think the conceit we have here is the characters come to life and visit him and kind of goad him about himself, his own journey, his uselessness as a writer. And that's the genius, that you can use the character of Scrooge, as played by Chris Plummer in the movie. You can use him to be, to almost put Dickens through some psychotherapy, really. And that's where all the humor comes from, and the fun.
Can I just ask you a quick production question
about
the film? Because it looks beautiful.
Mm.
Almost all period films that come from Britain look beautiful. Is this because so much of England is heritage listed? So getting a beautiful mansion or a wonderful drawing room or a library from a particular period isn't that hard because so much of it is preserved? Is this true?
I hate to shatter all illusions, but we shot this in Dublin, in Ireland.
Dublin as well. That counts as Britain.
Yes, there is. Obviously, there's a lot of Victorian and Georgian stuff hanging around. If it hadn't been bombed in World War II, it's around, so it's easier to access. But it's all about getting the right team around you, and we had a stellar production crew in our DOP and our production design, our costume, our hair and makeup, and it's that you're looking for a little bit of chemistry there because. It's been done 1,000 times before, as you say, and you kind of want to give it a fresh twist and something new, so it doesn't feel like the same old. And we searched for our look, and we found it, and I was just surrounded by some really very clever and good people who could kind of make it very cohesive. But yes, the locations were fabulous in Dublin, and we managed to to make the best of them. So and the set builds were beautiful as well.
One of the reasons why Christmas Carol is such a universal story and just so enduring is because of the universality of the characters and of Scrooge. I think the story, and certainly your film, very starkly shows that there's a little bit of Scrooge in all of us.
Mm.
And I'm wondering, hands on the table, totally honest, is there a little bit of Scrooge in you, hoping that this film becomes an annual Christmas favourite?
Look, is there a bit of Scrooge in me? I don't think it's Scrooge would just want to make lots of money from it, wouldn't he? But the guy in the end would want everyone to watch the film and enjoy it and become a better person for it. So, and for me, that's at the heart of it. It's a very enjoyable film, and like you said earlier, Dickens was he was the guy who created melodrama. So he was a populist. He wasn't like Shakespeare in the sense. He was really a fiction populist, and you love the idea of having entertaining people. But his genius was that he entertained people and tricked you into thinking about other things. Tricked you about thinking about social context and stuff. So it didn't feel like you were being hit over the head with or being preached to change. And he asks for a very tiny thing in his life, and it's a quote we use in the movie. And we give the quote to his dad, which is no person is useless who lightens the burden of another, and that in a way kind of represents all of Dickens's life. That's what he attempted to do. He wanted to make sure that we thought about other people. He looked at other people. If the shoe was on the other foot, what would you do? And in a way, I think the film hints at that. And it does exactly what Dickens did, because we kind of parallel Christmas Carol. You go in there and you enjoy it, and you're laughing, and you're hopefully crying for all the right reasons. And then at the end, maybe it, tells you about something about the human spirit, about the universal questions. Not that I want to be preachy at all. But for me, to be honest, if one person goes to the library or downloads Christmas Carol online after this film or any Dickens book and reads it, I think that's my job done. Then I'll be happy.
As we head into Christmas 2017, I think that this is a very timely movie because, as you say, there's that beautiful line about lightening another man's burden.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember a time in the social world where things have been so spiteful and so snarky and so ridden with attitude and I've got one over you. I'm just wanting to know, as an artist heading into 2017 with this Christmas film, how is Christmas 2017 shaping up for you? You look around at Britain at the moment. Just give me your snapshot of what you see.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting times, isn't it? It's, Dickens summed it up. To be honest, nothing's really changed. And one of the dichotomies he saw back in the 1840s, the haves and have-nots. And, he summed it up with that brilliant line, where it's the best of times, the worst of times, which is kind of, it's kind of still the same. We're in the best of times, the worst of times. We have amazing things around us and, from medicine to whatever. It's an extraordinary time, but it's also a time where, where the dichotomy, the haves and have-nots, the distance between the rich and the poor and the social fabric seems to be pulling apart. But it's, again, same thing happened in Dickens's time. And, the last thing he would have wanted you to feel is bleak, and he always left you with a sense of optimism that we were bigger than this and we were better than this. And I think that's I think that's pretty amazing. I think that's the genius of the book, Christmas Carol. It gives you hope. It's full of hope in the end, and shines a beacon on the fact that I think people are actually drawn to being good. I think that's part of our social fabric and our, and how we can connect with each other. I think we're actually kind of driven to goodness as opposed to, to fear and hate. And it's just good to be reminded of that every now and then as we, as the world seems to be getting more frightened of its neighbors, as we kind of shrink back, whether that's Britain or America or Australia or wherever it is. It's just good to be reminded that we're all so interdependent. And it can be a bit bleak coming at you and on across social media, on television. There's a good story is full of drama, and you need your second act, a hurdle to get over into your third act of hope. And I suspect we'll get there. I don't think we're just trying to, it's just interesting times, and like all interesting times, we work our way through. I'm very hopeful of things.
You made Mrs. Pettigrew, which was quite an enjoyable, uplifting film.
Yeah.
And you've made this film also a very positive, life-affirming, uplifting film. I'm very interested to know, as an artist, if you're looking around at the way things are at the moment, especially in Britain, with the immigration issue, I know that there is an issue with the Muslim community, with politics in general. Are you looking to do something which is topical, which is dealing with any of these issues? And also I wanted to couple that with, do you feel any pressure to do so?
No, I don't feel any pressure to do so. I mean, I'm very aware of all those issues and involved in other ways in those issues. It just takes me a while to find the right thing. I just don't want to be twee or glib or just make the equation A plus B equals C. It's a bit like this movie. I was trying to work out a way of doing Christmas Carol that was fresh and new and innovative, and that's what I'm always trying to find. Is a kind of grey area of stuff, and that's difficult to find. Interesting stuff that motivates me. So I deal with things in a slightly different way. I mean, Pettigrew on the surface feels like a kind of a bit of a light romp set in the late 30s, but it's actually a treatise on love and what's important and what your choices on love are. And also, I always said it, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but it's like I say they were kind of dancing on because it's set on one day, and it's the day that World War II breaks. And there's this social milieu going on where everyone's having a great time, except for the one person who's lived through World War One, which is the Frances McDormand character. And I always described it as everyone's on the Titanic and not seeing the iceberg coming. And the only person that can see the iceberg coming is Miss Pettigrew. And similarly, I think, harping to Dickens, I think that's what Dickens did. He could give you a rollicking, kind of enjoyable, story-led, adventure. Yet he could wrap politics into it, and he could say things without being too overt, which I think is a really powerful tool that we have as filmmakers. That you can actually, if you get it right, you say a lot more by entertaining people than preaching at them.
Now, one of the prevailing moods in America, unfortunately, at the moment, is racism. I can't remember a time when it was just so much on the agenda and so much a topic of discussion. Now, why this has occurred in the United States, whether it's to do with the new president or whether it is to do with a combination of factors, is a matter for debate. But the fact that it is a huge issue now is beyond any question. The director Jordan Peele, who made the film Get Out, was on the Stephen Colbert show just a couple of nights ago. And it was
it was a historical documentary.
No, Get Out was, Oh, that's
No,
right.
no, that's what he called it because it was put up as a comedy, I think.
That's right. Oh, you saw the interview.
No, I heard about it.
Yeah.
I heard
All
about
right. Well, I'm sure it's there on YouTube. But it was very interesting to see him talk about the film and for him to really make the point about the existing divide between black and white. He was very open about it and also open about the fact that, you know, people live in different worlds, whether it's race or class. Now, that's in America. Can I ask you what the situation is for you in Britain? Do you feel any of this, or is this something that's mainly an American social phenomenon?
No, I think, you know, wherever you go in the world. I mean, I actually live in America at the moment. I live in the heart of it all in Washington D.C. But wherever I've been in the world, there's a social divide, whether it's race, class, you know, economic, and there's always an underclass that does. You know, well, in the Western world, there's always an underclass that does all the work for you. You know, it's. I don't think it's particular to any place. I feel it's got it feels as though it's got more prevalent now. But I lived through the 1970s in the UK, which was a pretty nasty time if you're going to talk about racism. And then we had this golden period through the 80s, 90s, and you know, up until we had our recent issue with our Brexit vote. So, you know, it's interesting how it's come back to the fore. I'm not quite sure why that's happened, but, you know, I think it's a bit of ignorance all around. And again, I have hope that it will come around. It's like, you know, the thing about America is you get a new person every 4 years. The thing about the UK is you get a new person every 5 years. Look what just happened with your plebiscite in Australia last week. Amazing, you know. So, I mean, people move on, and you would have thought that might not have happened, but people move on, and you know. I genuinely, I can't pin it down. I'm an outsider in America because I'm British. I'm an Indian-born British guy in America, so it's very hard for me to comment strategically about how it works here. But genuinely, I feel, you know, the goods and the bads are pretty much in every society across the world, really.
So how are you in Washington D.C.? Are you making films there? What's up? It's
yeah, my wife is the Washington correspondent for a British news show, Channel 4 News. So she reports on all things America and Washington. So I'm the trailing spouse. So I came here. Basically, as a filmmaker, you always end up going anywhere but where you live. So to go and film, so I can go and live anywhere, but my wife has to be where the action is, and for her job, the action is in Washington D.C.
Just tell me what it is like for you now. Okay, you're promoting your movie, but how do you make an income? Are you just living off the royalties? Are you making TV commercials? What do you do?
I'm a director, so I direct. So if I'm lucky, I work. I'm a bit picky, so I tend to be careful about things. But you know, money's not a huge driver in my life. But I'm very lucky in that I'm in a position in my career where I can turn stuff down and not worry about not working again. I'm usually in demand, whether it be shooting TV pilots in America or the UK or the odd movie. I mean, if you notice, I don't do a movie every year. I kind of wait carefully for them. So it's, you know, it's good. I don't have expensive tastes, put it that way.
And for the record, we must credit you with you created or were instrumental in creating Hustle, the TV show.
Yeah, you know.
Wow.
I'd like So I came up with the idea, the original idea, and then brought in a brilliant writer to kind of flesh it all out. And really, it goes to him, a guy called Tony Jordan. But yeah, I mean, it was basically, we had a run of, I did the pilots for 3 shows that went on to do very well for the BBC. And it was a thing called Spooks, a thing called Hustle, and then a thing called Life on Mars, which were, the back-to-back hits for the B, which was a fun time.
Life on Mars was sensational. So kudos to your involvement in those shows.
Yeah, another film about a time-traveling guy.
Mate, final question. Got to ask it. Favourite Christmas films?
Favourite Christmas film? Well, I kind of said it before. It's A Wonderful Life. I would say Die Hard. Which people don't see as a Christmas movie, but I think it's a Christmas movie. And bizarrely, a movie that isn't a Christmas movie, but I think has all the resonance of a great Christmas movie, and that would be Groundhog Day. And I've got one more, which is The Muppets Christmas Carol, which is a work of genius.
What about Scrooge? Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant. So, I mean, who doesn't like Scrooge? So...